Welcome to Crafty Sourcer. If you're looking for a raw, unfiltered podcast on all things sourcing in APAC, you've come to the right place. Grab a coffee or wine and join your host and other guests as we dive deep into the complex and ever-evolving world of sourcing, keeping you informed on insights, tools, and even at times, a healthy sourcing debate or two. Now, here's your host, Denise Pereira from Kaleidosource. Settle in and let's get crafty. Grab a coffee or wine and join your host and other guests as we dive deep into the complex and ever-evolving world of sourcing, keeping you informed on insights, tools, and even at times, a healthy sourcing debate or two. Now, here's your host, Denise Pereira from Kaleidosource. Settle in and let's get crafty.
Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of Crafty Saucer. Now, last week was epic as we had Martin Freeman on as our first ever guest. But this week we actually traveled virtually to the other side of the world, all the way over to India, and we're catching up with someone who I admire and respect from afar. We're catching up with Srinivasa Raju, who is the TA manager at Publicis Sapient. Now, before I hand it over to Sri, I'd love to give a bit of a backstory here on how Shri and I actually connected. Now, Shri and I are in the same Facebook sourcing groups. And one thing that sort of stood out to me about Shri was he has been consistently and constantly sharing tips on tricks on tried and tested methods in sourcing. You know, he's created his own sourcing tools, he's an automation nerd himself. And that was something that just stood out to me on, and I really love just how much he is of a giver, and it was just a great reminder of what a fantastic sourcing community we have in general. So first of all, Shri, welcome onto our second episode of Crafty Sourcer, and thank you so much for saying yes to us.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for inviting me for the podcast, Dennis. And thanks for your kind words to basically, um, uh, in fact, talk about some of the contributions that I have done in on various Facebook groups.
Mhm.
So I actually like doing this because when you know something and you're comfortable sharing some of those with the audience, uh, which actually helps them in their day-to-day work. If Because if people are there, if there's a particular group on Facebook and it is for talent acquisition or it
Mhm.
is for sourcing, obviously, in fact, people have joined the group because they're interested in the craft, and basically that is how when I'm passionate about this whole thing, which is not like minuscule, but um, there is there's both depth and breadth to it, and some of those things I like sharing because I'm sure people would be benefited out of it.
Absolutely. And Shri, before I know we are obviously going to get into some sort of depth around a lot of the stuff that you've done here. So I always love asking this question: is I'm sure the listeners would love a quick intro into who is Srinivasa, and how did you fall in love with sourcing? Like, what was it about sourcing where you went and you thought, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to continue doing, and I'm going to keep adding
Yeah,
value.
yeah. So in fact, I started my work career, way back in December 1999. And when I started my career, I got into um, um, a factory,
Mm-hmm,
a garments factory. I was
mm-hmm,
there for about 1 year, and then I got into Emphasis, which is a known organization, right? A technology organization.
mm-hmm,
Uh, I was um, I was into uh, call center. I was I was basically working for an organization called Abbey in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Abbey was a bank, and I was basically working as a call center executive for inbound calls, anything related to banking for the customers of the bank.
Yeah.
Was there for about 2.5 years, and then I got a call. I got a call from an agency called as a recruitment agency called as um, um, can't remember right now. I think it's Paradigm Recruitment Solutions. Yeah, Paradigm
Mm-hmm.
Recruitment Solutions. And I got a call saying that, like, okay, it's a role for an account manager. An account manager basically who works on certain existing clients, heads the existing clients that they have,
Mm-hmm.
as well as interact with clients from a stakeholder management, meet them, and also probably add some value in terms of business development as well. More from an existing account delivery management, but also working closely with the recruiters and ensuring that we fulfill the needs that we have. So basically, it's and they used to do background verification as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to contribute on those areas as well. But yes, um, fast forward, I work with a lot of large organizations which are into agency, but at an MNC level. So I worked with a lot of such organizations, and basically was doing multiple roles into training, talent acquisition,
Mm-hmm.
sourcing, as well as account management, and various initiatives in terms of revenue generation, ROI, as well as basically working, taking up niche roles and fulfilling those. So this is what I was doing for a majority of my career.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, I have worked with IBM for 1 year. Then I came back. I joined Publicis Sapient more than 2 years here. But yes, how it all began is um, I really like finding people whom others can't find. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole thing about even if you are looking at job portals, um, there's still a way to find people whom others can't find,
Mm-hmm.
and it is so basically I try to basically look at the whole job description, decipher the job description, like what are the titles that we look at,
Mm-hmm.
what are the titles, and what are the possible titles, as well as what are the mandatory skill sets, what are the any of these two or any of these three kind of skill sets, and then what we can negate to find people of different data sets. Um, so that's how we kind of find everybody, but at the same time we find a lot of people whom others are not finding,
Mm-hmm.
and this kind of captivated me a lot. That's how it all began, and it forayed into different areas, different platforms, various hacks, growth hacks, and that's how it all began. And
And
I
no
would
looking
say,
back for you, is there?
yeah, no looking back. Having said that, uh, teaching or training people is something which gives me a high, right? More than doing my own work,
Mm-hmm.
contributing, teaching, and basically scaling people up. In something which they actually never do, right? Like curiosity is something which is the first, which is the most important thing, because when people, there are many people in recruitment who don't have the curiosity to go above and beyond and basically
Mm-hmm.
do something which is out of the ordinary against the
Mm-hmm.
run of play, and that's where the entire sourcing thing, talent sourcing begins, because if somebody doesn't have a mindset and curious to do something else, solve,
Mm.
basically I would call talent sourcing as a solution architect,
Yes,
right?
I've
So
heard you say that before as well.
Yeah, so that's how it all began, and I basically I love getting into different areas, right? Like whether it's JavaScript bookmarklets or automation, using some existing tools, building some of my own tools,
Mm.
um, sharing it with the team so that they
Mhm.
can benefit from that. So that's what I like doing apart from my uh, regular activity that I need to do. Yeah.
Awesome. And Shri, you've obviously been in the sourcing gambit for, so many years now. And you've been with some really large organizations where you've been spearheading a lot of the sourcing activities as well. What are some of this high level values you think that a sourcing function or a sourcer can bring to any organization, irrespective of, the complexity that the organization has?
Yeah. Obviously, in fact, it's a good question to ask. It's a little complex as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so, obviously, yes, different organizations work differently. There
Hmm.
are different metrics probably they look at.
Hmm.
So, there are certain organizations who probably started as an agency and then became a technology company. For example, let's say Datamatics or probably even tech systems,
Hmm.
right? So these type of organizations, right, like even if they become a technology organization, they're still looking at, okay, how many positions did you close, right?
Hmm.
Like whether it's a sourcer or a recruiter, it's always about how many positions did you close rather,
Hmm.
as well as how many interviews happened, how many sourced resumes on a daily basis, right? Like how many offers rolled out. So it's a typical kind of a mindset which happens in most of those organizations. But when talent acquisition to its true sense, um, um, so it has to be strategic, not just
Hmm.
closing positions for billing.
Absolutely.
So, but having said that, the many organizations, as you might be aware, who don't have a sourcing practice. It's all like it's either people who are just regular recruiters, or they expect some of, okay, they're learning these tricks and tricks of the trade, and basically expecting some of these people who can be a full stack recruiter,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Like or a uh, recruiter who can do a bit of this, a bit of sourcing as well as the other tasks which a recruiter would be doing. Like for example,
Hmm.
ATS, they should be aware of the ATS, and making use of the ATS, the gold medalists, the silver medalists, and so even that, I don't think there are too many people who actually do that. But having
True.
said that, to answer your question, um, one of the most important things that people in talent acquisition and sources should ensure is candidate experience.
Hmm.
Candidate experience is something which doesn't change. Having said that, um, people whom we put through the pipeline, through the interview pipeline, is
Hmm.
something which is our responsibility, whether it's a recruiter or a talent sourcer. The quality that goes through the pipe is something which is really, really important. And for that, I believe there are many recruiters who don't understand tech.
Mm.
For example, if I'm working on something, or if the team is working on something here in the current organization, we always ensure that um, we understand the technology, right? Different
Yeah.
phases of technology, and we could basically do an initial round of interview with the candidates, even before we process them for an interview. So
Hmm.
we're pretty much sure that there is a good chance that the person can get selected, but definitely we're absolutely sure that the person is not going to be um, uh, a definite reject, right?
Mm.
Like it's something like, okay, the person could be a drop down from the level that the person has been proposed for, or it could be that, like, okay, the person has done fairly well, like an average candidate, but not somebody who's uh, really bad from a
Mm.
technical interview perspective. So one is putting people who are really good from the quality is really good from our initial screening,
Mhm.
plus ensuring that the candidate experience is right up there, building a brand for yourself. So
Mm.
that's
Mhm.
something which is really, really important, which
Mhm.
needs to be coached for people in the talent acquisition as well as talent
Yeah.
sourcing. Yeah, I would say these three are really important.
Yeah, and I think you make a fair point around the value aspect of it, because when you look at the true sense of sourcing, when we have to go out and we have to bring in a lot of passive candidates into the process, it is not just about the nurturing aspect of it. The candidate experience starts from the time we actually do an initial reach out, when we start finding these people, engaging with them. So it's really important to put ourselves in their shoes, and as sourcers as well, we have to be creating those, crafting those compelling sort of stories, to really ensure that they understand the value, and obviously bring that value back into the business, because we are the front facing people of the business. So you spoke about, having a strong sort of brand, because you are the face of the business to start with. So I think that's a really critical point that you brought in there. And candidate experience should be from start to finish. It needs to be not just smooth, but it needs to be consistent, because I've seen where you've got a sourcing function and then you do a handover back to the recruiter, and then it can cause a bit of disruption in terms of the candidate experience as well. So having that understanding of how a true partnership works between sourcing and recruiting is also, I think, pretty critical in terms of that value that it brings back as a whole sort of function back into the business.
Absolutely. And it's also really, really important that you speak the same language. Like, for
Oh,
example,
indeed.
you might not always work on technical roles, but if
Mhm.
you are, even if you're not working on technical roles, right, you need to speak the same language that they speak. And I'm not, when I say that, I'm not referring to the language that we actually talk, but the work, what
Mhm.
based on the craft, their craft, and the kind of work that they do, in which stream they're working. So
Mhm.
you need to be able to, as a sourcer, as a recruiter, you need to be able to understand that a little more deeply, though
Yeah.
you might not have the depth, but at least at a breadth wise, in fact, you're aware of things, how it
True.
works,
Mm.
and understand the workflows as well. It
Mm.
becomes easy for you to have a conversation with the candidate.
Mm.
Um, and normally, when that happens, okay, when a conversation starts, the candidate normally thinks that, okay, this is just another call. I'm getting so many calls like these.
Mm.
I might probably, the initial reaction is, okay, I would say that I'm not interested. But
Mm. Mm.
once the conversation starts, I believe it's what I do. I believe we should basically who I am, and where I work and what I do. But having
Mm.
said that, we should also the importance of storytelling about the organization and about you as an individual, and how you can actually contribute
Mm.
to the person. And also, I say things like, okay, make notes in this conversation, because
Mm.
you're going to learn something in this
Mhm.
conversation, and
Mhm.
I'm going to know you better, and
Mhm.
probably I'm also going to identify some improvement areas if there
Yeah.
are any. So, having a conversation like this with the storytelling, and it just makes the person just listen to you,
Mm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
rather than from a mindset of cutting the call.
Mm.
And one thing which people don't talk about is when you're talking to somebody, uh, you're actually interrupting their work life,
Mhm.
right? So
Absolutely.
people don't talk about it, but yeah, you're actually interrupting people when they're working. And
Yeah.
the many a times when we call people, they might not be available. And
Mm.
um, and if you find a real good candidate, and if you on paper, you never know until you talk to them, right? Like,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
but yes, these are some things which stand out,
Mm.
as and I like talking, I like picking up the phone, and because there's
Yeah.
nothing like it.
Same. And I think there's two things I'm hearing here, Shri, in terms of what you're saying is one is creating those connections from the get-go. But also I think it's really important for sometimes for us to be an SME in our area, for us to be speaking their language. I think sometimes it's really good to be honing into that craft of, let's say, if someone is a tech sourcer, then they kind of stick to sort of that sort of world of theirs. Do you think that's probably the best way to go? Because when we sort of
Yes.
want to speak their language, like when I was doing design, I really got into design, and I was like, okay, I'm actually speaking their language. I can understand what they're saying. It's not going over my head. We are speaking exactly the same language.
No, it's the best way to go about it because, again, so there's no quality in volume.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so the way we stand out is not just personalization of messaging. Yes, that is required, but I have seen some of them not actually talking to people. They just keep on crafting emails
Mm-hmm.
and and basically people who respond, they just talking to them or processing them for the next level, or if they're only a sourcer, then transferring it to a recruiter. But
Mm-hmm.
having said that, life becomes monotonous, and we need to
Mm-hmm.
make it life at work becomes monotonous, and we need to make it interesting. The only way to make it interesting is we get to talk to, it's not like we have to do it, but we
Mm-hmm.
get to do something, right? Like, and we need to make, when we think about it that way, we make our work a little more interesting, and we need to always think about, okay, how can I make it interesting for myself? Like, for example, let's say you're filling a form, like you're filling an Excel sheet or things like that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how can I add some filters to this, like which makes filling an Excel sheet interesting for me, or filling a spreadsheet
Yeah.
interesting for me, right? Like things like that. So we need to add some life into what we do. So that
Spot on.
becomes yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Shubhantri. Now let's talk a little about, as we know, sourcing can actually be a game changer, but it's also a time saver at the same time. I know you are a self-proclaimed automation nerd. We've touched on this quite a few times. How have you been using Gen AI to automate a lot of your repetitive tasks that you're doing in your day-to-day work? You can tell us. I know you mentioned there are some apps you've built. Tell us, if you're happy to talk us through some of the stuff that you've built. How has
Yes.
that helped you in your day-to-day?
Yeah. I actually think about, not myself, um, but I actually think about when I work somewhere, or to the community. I actually think about building something for the organization in the space and building something for the community in that space. I don't really
Mhm.
think about myself,
Mm,
and that's my weakness, right? So when I build something, I actually um, always curious, like always thinking
mm,
about, okay, which problem can I solve? What is the problem? Thinking from a solution architect,
mm,
problem solving kind of a mindset in the area of talent acquisition and talent sourcing. So uh, what problems as an organization or the people, what kind of problems are they not solving, so they need to
mm,
do this from a productivity standpoint, from a efficiency standpoint, from a time saving standpoint, right? Like all of these, and basically some growth hacks. Yeah. What I would definitely like doing is, I actually like using mail merge and um, forms, like whether it's Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, because when you craft a form which um, a technical person or any person in that field, again, when you talk their language and create a form which is very, very precise, a form can actually speak louder than a job description,
mm.
because
Yeah.
a job description can be really convoluted, or it could be a little clouded or a little foggy sometimes for people.
Mhm.
But when you create a that actually comes when you have a proper discussion, like when you normally have multiple recurring intake meetings, or when you have a proper discussion with multiple people in the hiring team, you get to understand what is that they're looking for. And obviously you need to tap different data sets, you need to tap different organizations, you need to understand which are the organizations which are doing a similar kind of a work, and accumulating all that information and basically creating something like a Microsoft form which actually directly talks to them. And what is that you have
Hmm.
done, have you done this, have you done that, like making it easy by having options, and not making them type something. And then
Hmm.
basically when we do a mail merge, we could do certain personalization, and adding the forms link to that
Hmm.
makes our life so much more uh, easier, and it saves a lot of time. For example, let's say in a week, a person might be talking to, let's say a recruiter might be talking to 100 people in a week.
Hmm.
Now, by just doing this, we basically reduce 2 days of our work, because
Hmm.
without talking to people, you're getting information about them, and that way you decide whom to talk and whom not to talk.
Yeah. And are
This is
these for sourced candidates, Shri, or are these for direct applicants, or you'll use it
no,
both ways?
it could be for anybody, as
Hmm.
long as you have their email IDs.
Right. Gotcha.
Right. So we could just send them, or basically even if you do not have email IDs, it could be like you're posting somewhere, or it's even let's say you're using a job board, and you could do a mass mail option. There's a mass mail option. You could do that, or let's say you're doing your in-mails. You could add the forms there. Like yeah, obviously you're not going to do a mail there email, but you can add the forms link. So whenever we do this, when we add the forms link, it actually saves us a lot of time.
Hmm.
And what really when we talk their language, we start getting and when they listen to us, because this is the kind of discussion probably they have never had in their career.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and a recruiter or a sourcer talking their language is probably, apart from okay, what's your CTC, what's your compensation, what's your
Yeah.
notice period, what's your relevant experience in
Hmm.
these, right? So you need to go out of
Yeah.
the ordinary, and once that happens, you start getting a lot of references.
Hmm.
People come back to you, and you start getting a lot of references from people. And that is and when we have a proper discussion, this is what I'm looking for. Can you let me know of anybody whom you know who would be an exact fit? And don't bother talking to me, I will talk to them. um, and I'll keep your name confidential, right? So you
Yeah.
don't even have to talk to them. I'm
Yeah.
saving that time for you. So when we have that kind of a discussion, I get a lot of references, and I also tell people how to ask for references, because that's an art as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And Shri, with this, what is the ROI come back? Like, what is the data behind it? What is the data suggested that is this working? Is it working really well? You said it's obviously condensed a lot of time down to what, 2 days from 5 days?
Yeah, it does, because when you're actually not talking to people, and basically getting that information, obviously you are spend the time that you would have spent is not spent. That time is basically you're saving that time, and you could leverage that time that you have spent into attracting passive candidates, right? Like not all of them would respond to these messages, but
Hmm.
making a tracker, like for example, okay, these are the people whom for whom I sent the emails with the forms. Okay,
Hmm.
who responded and who didn't respond. Okay, if you
Hmm.
have the contact details, you just pick up the phone and talk to them. Like many a times, like it really helps when your organization is sponsoring certain conferences, like for example, whether it's into design, UX design, or development, or any of these conferences, right? Like you get the entire list of their social links,
Indeed.
their
Yeah.
emails, as well as their mobile numbers. So we could leverage that, and we could easily convert that into, we could, as a first step we could do this, but then if it like who are people who have not responded, probably we could do another email merge in another 7 days. And if there's a lot of other people who have still not responded, you pick up the phone and talk to them, and
Hmm.
basically understand if this works for them, if this is something which they're interested in, based on what we do as an organization, um, and our expectations. So again, with storytelling, I believe the missing link is the storytelling and talking their language,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Shri, on to our last question. We're coming to the end of the podcast. So, in terms of tools, can you tell us your top three strategic tools to automate your sourcing strategy?
Yeah. So I would definitely, in fact, the ones that I spoke about, so that's there up there. Having said that, uh, we could use. No, I heard about. In fact, I did watch the first episode with Martin Freeman. It was really good.
Mhm.
You spoke about um, uh, what was that like? You
Clay?
spoke about, yeah, clay, which is basically spreadsheets on steroids, right? Like so. Right? Yeah, I'm aware of it since the last more than 1 year, but I have not used it. I know how it works, like how you can set up certain things, right? Like, and you in each cell you can actually get information
Exactly.
pertaining that. Once you have set the context, you can grab that information, right?
Yeah.
Like I know how it works.
You can keep
Having
enriching the data based on what
Yes,
what you keep selecting within that cell.
I believe there are some areas which are free. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, but most of it is paid functionalities, right? Like for
Hmm.
example, we can connect it with let's say some of the enriching tools, contact enriching tools. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, there is Make, there is Zapier. I think Integromat became Make, I think. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
Make. Yeah, so these are there, but I have not used it. Phantom Buster, I have not. I did use it for a little bit, but I become. I feel basically using a lot of these techniques, right? Using a lot of these techniques too much. Um, I think we lose the plot.
We can. We
We
absolutely
can.
can because we rely too heavily on them,
Hmm.
on the automation aspect, which is not always a bad thing, but I guess you need to leverage it with something else, not
Yes,
use it
yes,
as a one-stop shop for everything.
yeah. So it's as you know, like people who are into sourcing, they can easily get into something which uh, they end up spending a lot of time,
Mm.
and they get um, into it so much that like that time is not best used, but best utilized.
Which
And
would be your top three, though, that you'd recommend anyone to use in
from
terms
a
of how
tool
to
from a tool
automate?
standpoint, yeah,
Mhm.
from a tool standpoint, there are a lot of tools I can talk about. Definitely instant data scraper is something
Mhm.
which we can use, and I have built my own scraping tools as well.
Mhm.
Custom search engines is something,
Mhm.
I built multiple custom search engines, definitely about 24 of them. Uh, uh, I built multiple recipes, different recipes, scraping recipes on data miner. That's something which you can use.
Amazing.
I would suggest people who want to scrape information on LinkedIn, they could use Academy Scraper or Clipstrack, or basically even the data miner version 1.1, which Susanna Fraser
Yes,
yeah,
I've
added
heard of.
into her GitHub account. So there
For
are a lot of.
everyone that's listening, this is very, very technical. So we are definitely going to drop in the links into the comment section once this goes live, for everybody to check out as well.
Yeah, there are many of them. In fact, there was a time when I had about 173 to 200 upwards in terms of Chrome extensions. There are about 20. extensions which I used to use for contact finding. Some of
Mhm.
them pretty much uh, email finders, and few of them, about eight of them, like to name a few, like Lucia, Seek Out, as well
Yeah,
as
yeah.
Signal Hire,
Signal
um,
is really good.
Signal Hire, and a few others. Uh, SalesQL is really good for contact finding. Kendo, I think, gives 50. SalesQL gives us
Mm-hmm.
100 per month free. There are quite a few of these contact finding
Mm.
extensions, but I have kind of mostly done away with that because sometimes we can get into problems with
Yeah.
LinkedIn jail. Um, so apart from that, um, yes,
We can share as many links as we
yeah,
want. We are at time, by the way. So, Shri, once again, I am so happy that you decided to come on this podcast. I think so many people are going to get value from it, and I will highly encourage anyone that's listening to this to please connect to Shri. He is doing some phenomenal stuff on as side projects as well. So he's always open to you reaching out to him, wanting to know more about his data scraping tools that he's made, how to build out custom search engines. Shreve, once again, thank you so much for saying yes to coming on to this podcast.
yeah. Thank you so much.
We are going to be dropping this episode this week, and it will have all the links that Shri has just mentioned as well. So, Shri, thank you so much,
Yeah,
and see you later, everybody.
thank you. Yeah,
Bye.
bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode, and we'll be back next week with another exciting episode. If you found this valuable, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Once again, happy sourcing and stay crafty. Until next time.